What up, gamers? I'm Jason.
I'm Julie.
And today on Dice & Dragons, we are going to be reviewing one of the expansions for Wingspan. This is the Oceania Expansion. It is, of course, designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. We do have fantastic art, once again, by Beth Sobel. Ana Maria Martinez Jaramillo. Sorry,
job.
That's just a little tricky to get out there. And Natalia Rojas. This is, of course, published by Stonemaier Games. And what did you want to say on that front, Julie?
On that front, we'd like to thank Stonemaier Games for a review copy. Always appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the channel. But we'd like to remind our viewers that, as always, our opinion will be our own.
All right, so tell them about the game now.
So this is an expansion that is based on Wingspan, and it does not change the original player count or stats for the game. So it's a 1 to 5 player game. It's intended for ages 10 and above, and it plays in about 40 to 70 minutes.
Yeah, I think you've got everything covered there. So what are you going to be doing in Wingspan The Oceania Expansion? Well, just like Wingspan, you're going to be playing birds onto your tableau in one of the 3 habitats, scoring points. However, there are some new mechanics in this expansion. You have the nectar mechanic, which you'll be using as a wild and also to score some endgame points. You also have the game end mechanics that are present on some birds. So sometimes you're going to be playing the birds and only getting a nice benefit once you get through the entire game. And I think I've covered everything.
Yep.
All right, so what time is it?
It's time to grab our drinks.
Yes, grab our drinks, grab our best friend for the moment.
We gotta take it to the table one more time.
One more time. Maybe I'll finally defeat you in this one.
Yeah, so far you're having trouble.
Yep. Now we're going to take a look at the components for Wingspan Oceania. So here we have the new rule book. Nice list of the components. Love the feel of the rule books, just like every Stonemaier game. Pages 2 and 3 detail how to play, whereas the rest of the rulebook is an appendix for the new bird powers and to help you figure anything out while you're playing the game. We, of course, have new rules for the Atoma, which will tell you how to use the nectar, as well as the new scoring for the Oceania expansion, as well as how the Atoma will select the dice, because that's right, we've got new dice. Now, before we move away from the Atoma, just want to show you we do have some of the new cards. So round 1, round 2, round 3, and round 4 scoring, and then just explanations as to what they're going to do and how they're going to score. I haven't played the game solo yet, so I can't really provide you much more detail. You, of course, have a new scoring pad because of the new things like the nectar. We do get new end-of-game objectives, so we'll just take a quick look at them. Columns with a matching pair of trio of nests. We have grassland data and an analysis. Grassland data analyst. So depending on the amount of consecutive birds, you can score some nice stuff. Sets of 4 nest types. So really, it's pretty cool to have these new goals that you can be going for. We also have a new end of round reference sheet because we do have the game end abilities that are new. Then we have 4 new end of round objectives. Now they are double-sided, so you may end up with no goal, cubes on play a bird, beak pointing left, worms in food costs of your birds. We'll flip these over quickly. We've got birds that are worth less than or equal to 3, rodents and fish in the cost of your birds, beaks pointing right. And then lastly, we have cherry plus wheat in the food cost of your birds. Here we then have the new nectar resource. You do have a lot of tokens. We get some more eggs. These yellow ones are from the Oceania expansion. Now we also have the new dice, so you can see the new symbols. We have nectar and wheat, nectar and cherries. Other than that, it's rodents, as you can see, worms, fish, worms, wheat. So the dice remain the same. It's really the space just for wheat and the space just for cherries that were changed. So when you are playing with Oceania, you will need to use the new dice. We also have brand new player boards, and these player boards do give you some new abilities. So as you can see, we've got this endgame scoring mechanic for the nectar. Here you can spend the food to reset the bird feeder. You can see down here you can spend a nectar to gain a card as well. And that's what you get with all of these new spaces. So not a big change, but something that is definitely significant. And lastly, let's take a quick look at the birds. We're not going to go through all the stacks. We've got plenty of them, but just so you can see a little bit what we've got. So a rainbow lorikeet, cherry, and a nectar. So when activated, you may discard 1 nectar to the spent nectar space. For your tree birds, if you do, you will gain 2 dice from the bird feeder. It's pretty cool. These yellows are the game end effects. You may lay 1 egg on each of your birds with a specific nest type. Once between turns, once again, you have a lay eggs action bird like you get in the base game. So predation. So very much you're going to have a lot of elements that are similar to what you've seen previously in Wingspan, but there's things like this one, the 2E, 1 worm and 2 nectars. When activated, copy or brown power on 1 bird in the forest region of the player to your left. So you are getting some new stuff that is being added. So game end, you may discard 2 eggs from your forest. If you do, play 1 bird in your prairie at its normal food cost. If it has a when played or game end power, you can use it. So pretty cool stuff. Don't want to spend too much time going through everything. We'll take a look at one last game end power. So you may lay 1 egg on each of your birds with a wingspan less than 30 centimeters. So a few really neat ways to gain some points at the end of your game. And there you have it. These are the components that you're going to be getting in Wingspan Oceania. Take a quick look at these birds' pictures. Now stick with us because Julie and I love the fact that there's a penguin. Sorry, I just had to mention it. Julie and I will be coming back at you with our review of this expansion. So what did you think of the Oceania expansion for Wingspan?
So we haven't discussed this at all. So I'm a little curious what this is going to, how this is going to look, because I beat Jason quite a few times in this game. Yay! It doesn't happen very often.
Well, so we've discussed some of the ways that happens, but luck is a big factor. That being said, Julie uses her cards very skillfully when she plays the game.
Oh, thank you. So this game is as beautiful, this expansion I should say, is as beautiful as the original game, which means, I still love that part of it. Basically, you're getting more of the same and a couple of different things, right?
And one of the big things about the expansion really is the new nectar mechanic, besides just the birds, as well as the new player boards that will give you a few more options that I really like having, such as being able to reset the bird feeder, and which you didn't actually have before. And you can also use nectar for some of the resources in terms of drawing more cards. So it just gives you more options and different paths with regards to managing your resources and getting more resources.
It also, so it has the nectar, it also has end game goals, right?
Yes, well that is the new aspect on the cards themselves, on the bird cards.
The end game?
Yes.
Okay. So for me, the nectar makes the game easier to play. I don't know if you agree, easier to play than the original version, because it gives you 1 more wild, basically, and it gives you more bonus points that are easier to come by. Let's say our end of game scoring that's easier to come by. I don't hate the mechanic. I find it very random. I was very unlucky in my plays of this.
Well, the last play you really were struggling for nectar.
Let's just say that in every game that we played, and I think I won 3 games.
Yes.
Nectar never was a determining factor or helped me at all. But in the same respect, then it didn't hinder me. It helped some people get more points to get closer, but it's not the deciding factor in the game. And I don't think personally, unless it's a very, very tight game, I don't think the addition of 2 or 5 points is going to make that big of a difference.
Well, I think it definitely could, because if you take a look at what happened in our last game, and we played this at 4 players only. I do think that
we played it at 3 as well.
Oh yes, 3 and 4 players. But I do think if you get to a 5-player game where you're just going to have those resources a little bit more spread out, you'll probably have a lot more activity from the once between turn powers. Nectar could really make a big difference. I also think that in a smaller game, if you're going head-to-head 2 players, those 5 points can be the difference between victory and losing, because you're getting 5 or you're getting 2.
Yeah.
So it's something you want to go for.
So for me, it didn't bother me. I guess, do you want to talk about what your opinion is of it now?
So the nectar mechanic, in terms of having a wild, does facilitate the play. I don't know if I love the mechanic or not. It definitely does make it a lot easier to get out birds and to play the game, build your engines. They're going to get going faster. Also, the using nectar to pay for the resources on the board, then being able to cash it to get end game points is pretty cool. So I like the idea of it, but sometimes I find that by having a wild, it almost makes it too easy, I would say.
It's like having two wilds, right?
Yeah.
Because two of the same, it's not like they replaced the nectar mechanic. The two of the same.
Yeah. So what I mean is just having a wild that you can use for anything, I think really almost makes it sometimes I feel like a little too easy to build the engine. And I think that by having the nectar, it's great because it eases the speed of play. But if you're just not getting a lot of luck, and other players are, say, getting nectar or have cards that will let them get nectar, and having the wild, they'll just can fly ahead of you.
In the last game, I had Jason to my right, which meant Jason always played before me. I rarely got nectar. Unless I was resetting the bird feeder when it was my turn to play, I just didn't get any.
Yeah, well, that wasn't me blocking it. That was because it made the most sense. And oftentimes...
I'm not saying. I'm just saying I just didn't get any. So that's, and you won. But that's the only game you won as well.
Yeah, and I won quite handily that game, actually.
Yeah.
I built a really nice engine, but that's one of the things I was going to bring up is if we're talking about new mechanics. So for the nectar, I'm still a little undecided. I like a lot of what it adds to the game in terms of the ease of play. It just feels a little unbalanced to me. So... take it or leave it. It's not something I think the game needed per se. And we'll have to see when we actually get the European expansion, which one I prefer.
Yeah, and I think maybe if you were going to add the nectars, I would have removed the using 2 foods to create a wild. I wouldn't have 2 wilds. I mean, rarely did people use them, but they still had that option. So I think I would remove it if you have a wild that's so easily accessible.
Yeah, and then we have the new end of game powers on birds. And the one thing I will say about that, and it's from what we saw, there were some birds that had end of game powers. It was like discard. The powers are not created equal.
Well, none of them are for all of the birds, whether it's
I think the end of game powers, there's a lot more disparity in it because if you have an end of game power that's just sort of okay, unless you have that bird early on and you need to play it in the forest, the field, or in the water habitat, you're really probably going to want to discard it because you're only going to get to use an okay power once. Whereas if you've got a strong game end power at the end of the game, you're going to score more points with it. And having a power on a bird that you can do multiple times, such as tucking a card or even being able to lay eggs, is going to give you a lot more benefit than some of these game end powers.
Yeah, but it's part of the randomness. I mean, I think you have that with the others as well, with the other powers as well. I mean, I was very, very unlucky in my game, my last game that we played, and all of the cards I was picking up basically had poor powers or no powers. So I picked up a lot of birds that were very few points and no powers. And then I picked up some that had powers that just weren't appropriate for the type of game that I was trying to play. Personally, I'm not a big fan of playing a card that is giving you a power where the resources that you're getting are going to everybody. Yes, that's great. Everybody gets resources, but everybody's getting the resources. It's not helping me win the game. So I think it's the same thing with the end of game. I think it's similar.
I disagree though because, and this is where we don't see eye to eye, is because even if the power isn't great, you're still going to use it more often. Whereas you can have an end game power, which is kind of just like I got a victory point or 2 victory points. And even if you build your engine, you might not be able to use it. Whereas, for example, even a power where, let's say, you're giving food to other players, you can at least potentially generate 5 or 6 food, which is going to go further than that end of game power. So that's where I think that the balance is off.
Yeah. So I mean, this game doesn't change the fact that it's very random. So like I said yesterday, my last game was just very, very.
You still did very well.
Yeah, I came in tied for second. Actually, no, I think I ended up winning one.
Oh no, you were tied, 80 and 80.
No, there was an extra point that was found afterwards, an extra tuck card. I thought. Anyways, it doesn't matter. The point being, Jason won that one handily, and that's where the randomness works against me. There are other games the randomness worked against Jason, and I think actually in the game we played yesterday, the randomness also played against another player that was playing with us. So It really is. That's part of Wingspan. There is a lot of randomness depending on what you're picking up. Yesterday's game, obviously we played yesterday. I keep referring to yesterday. The bonus cards also were not going, and that's it. We talked about it with Wingspan. It's the same thing. You can get a bonus card. You can try to pick the one that you think will do the best, and just not pick up any cards that help with that. One of the players we played with yesterday ended up picking up multiple bonus cards
and scoring tons
of points that way. I tried the same thing. I had 3 bonus cards and I still only got 4 bonus points at the end just because I couldn't get it. So that's part of the randomness.
And one thing I do want to highlight about this expansion that I think will be good to go to the review is that having the wilds, though, does make the game easier to play. So if you are looking to buy let's say this is going to be a present Wingspan for a non-gamer, or you want to take this out with family members that haven't played Wingspan before, if you're going to pick between the European expansion or the Oceania expansion, I would pick this one because ease of play is always something that we really like, especially when introducing new people to the hobby or players that maybe would find Wingspan to be a little bit more complicated than they're used to. Having ways for them to get more cards out rapidly is definitely going to improve their experience. And I don't think I really have any more to add to this. Do you?
No, I mean, I think I'm ready to rate it. Do you want to go first?
Go ahead, you go first.
So for me, this expansion is a 7.5. It's a solid expansion. I think it makes it more accessible. You can use it or not. If you don't like the nectars, you can use the regular game. But I think, as Jason just pointed out, I'm not going to reiterate everything he said. I think this makes the game more accessible. And I personally like the end of game. I think it adds another dynamic that I think makes the game better.
So I'm going to agree with Julie. This is a 7.5. And for those of you that watch the channel know, I always review also a little bit more based on the mechanics, and something that's becoming more and more important to me is ease of play and getting this game to the table with just anybody. And that's what Oceania does in spades. It makes the game even more accessible. So we haven't played the European expansion yet. I might prefer the European expansion. Don't know, but this is definitely a solid expansion for anyone that's looking to enhance their Wingspan experience, get more birds, get new powers. I think the only disappointing thing that I noticed in the expansion is, as of right now, it doesn't seem like there is a way to play all of the expansions together. The rules say to play this with the European expansion or this with Wingspan. So that's the best way to play it, mixing 2 decks of cards together to make sure that you don't have things going a little crazy. So,
Jason, maybe just to clarify, just so somebody doesn't think that you're contradicting yourself, I understand what you're saying, but you recommended before between the European expansion and this one.
I said I might prefer the European expansion.
It's that you would definitely get this one because it makes it easier. The thing is, we haven't played the European expansion, but we've the version of the game we've seen it, and we've spoken to people who've explained the differences, so we know what the European expansion brings to the table. That this game, what it brings to the table, and what this expansion.
Well, the reason why I said that it's easier, just to clarify once again, thank you for explaining that, Julie, is the nectar mechanic. Getting cards to the table in this expansion is easier, whereas in the European expansion, you are still playing the same mechanics as Wingspan. There are some new things, but it's definitely the nectar that gives this the edge in terms of accessibility.
Exactly.
All right. So now what time is it, Julie?
And now it's time to remind people to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified when we have some new content for you.
Also, take a look down below in the video description where you will find links to all of our social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So if you'd like to see pictures of us playing Wingspan or the new expansion, they'll be all over those feeds. And then popping up in front of us, you're going to have links to some of our previously released content. So in front of me is going to be our most recently released video. And in front of Julie, it's going to, of course, be our review of Wingspan. So what do we need to do now?
Now we grab our drinks.
Grab our best friend. Are we still friends?
Yeah, because I beat you more often than you beat me.
Oh, okay. At least I creamed you that one time.
And we're going to keep playing games.
Keep playing games. Well, we're definitely going to be reviewing the European expansion in the future.